Hey everyone, I'm Shannon Gonter. I'm a professional counselor here in Louisville, Kentucky. Welcome to our Ask Anything series. These are questions that have been submitted by you guys and we're getting them answered by professionals in the mental health and wellness field. Today we are here with Denise. She is the owner of Acadia Counseling and she's also based in Louisville, Kentucky. She is a licensed counselor and a board certified supervisor. She does work with adults, kind of ranging with all different anxiety disorders. So if you've been worrying a lot, kind of to the point that you're not really able to enjoy your life or feel things, kind of getting out of control in your life, she is someone who can definitely assist you with that. She also works with couples and she kind of specializes in working with couples who have a really difficult time communicating. Maybe they're arguing a little bit more often, and maybe simply have lost their connection with each other and are trying to, renegotiate that. She is accepting new clients. She is mostly seeing clients right now via telehealth, but is still offering very limited in-person appointments as well. You can read more about her and all about her counseling practice on her website, and that's acadiacounseling.com. But yeah, she's really great. So check her out and follow her on social and all the things. But okay, Denise, today's question is something that was submitted about anxiety. And since you work with anxiety, we feel like this would be a great question for you to answer. And the question is, how are my thoughts making me more anxious?
That's a great question, first of all. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. So anxiety very much is triggered by our thoughts, by our thought process, in doing some, learning over the years and doing some quick research today. Anxiety is actually the number one most common mental health concern, as cited by the National Institutes of Mental Health. And, one of the things that I want to point out from the beginning about anxiety is that everybody has anxiety. There's good anxiety, and then there's anxiety that makes you less functional in the world. There are two types of people that have anxiety, or two types of people that experience anxiety. There are those that are able to manage that anxiety and not let it affect their day-to-day interactions with people. And then there are those that, at one time or another have spikes of anxiety, sometimes lasting a short period of time, a day, a week, a month, and sometimes it lasts much longer. And coping with it is very difficult sometimes. So that's why professionals like Shannon and I are around to help people with that. So when you think about anxiety and thought disorders, our brains are really unique structures. They're very complicated structures. And while our brains get a lot of things right, and they help us to remember how to do things like how to tie our shoes or how to drive a car, sometimes our brains get things wrong. And that is a big trigger for anxiety for some people. Unfortunately, our brains sometimes interpret things incorrectly. Sometimes it leads to some guesswork, and our brain puts together bits and pieces, maybe through memories and maybe partially through current experiences, and then our brain guesses wrong. And that is what triggers anxiety in people.
Yeah, I always think of it as kind of like our brains or humans not liking things just ending in question marks. And so it's like pull from anywhere, pull from any experience or anything and like plug something in.
Absolutely. Yeah. And if you know anything about the brain structure, there's so many neurons and so many pathways and so many like little pockets of information that are stored all over the brain. And anxiety really is kind of that scramble for that information to help make sense of what we're experiencing. So there's a really cool story that I like to use with my clients in sessions. So I give everybody a little bit of my therapy nugget today. So when, as humans, as we evolved, back in caveman days, right? There was a lot for humans to be anxious about, right? So there were
survival
saber-toothed tigers and, we might fall in a tar pit, or, just all of these daily things that really threatened our survival. Of course, life expectancy back then was like, 20 or 25, right? So, there were lots of things that could kill you.
Mm-hmm.
Over our evolutionary time, what's happened is that, we don't have saber-toothed tigers walking around on the planet anymore. And on the whole, we are generally pretty safe walking the planet these days.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of protections. We have homes with solid walls and solid doors, and we have, emergency services who can come help us if there is a threat. Unfortunately, what happens for some people is that little switch in the brain gets turned on, and they think they're living back in caveman days,
Mm-hmm.
back in the very rudimentary parts of our brain. That switch gets flipped on, and unfortunately, it stays on. And things that normally aren't perceived as threats, all of a sudden are very huge threats for these individuals.
Yeah, and people often, I feel like, say like, I'm stressing over things that like doesn't matter, it means nothing. Like, why am I stressing over the littlest things? And it's like, that, but your brain doesn't always know the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And part of the strategy of learning to cope with that anxiety is actually using what you just said, and we'll get to that in a little bit. So, from my theoretical perspective as a therapist, I do a lot of work with people in the connection between thoughts and feelings and behavior. Mm-hmm. And the path, I guess, to be able to cure some of this anxiety that is holding people back is restructuring our thoughts, or those things that are called cognitive distortions, mm-hmm. which is basically where the brain gets things wrong. Mm-hmm. So the first step in being able to kind of correct these cognitive distortions is to recognize when it's happening. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that's a long path. Sometimes that's a very big struggle for people to realize, because it's been going on for so long.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure you've seen clients like that, Shannon. Mm-hmm. And then the second part then is to label them, right? You want to label them as cognitive distortions, and there are many types of cognitive distortions out there. Some of you may know people that engage in all or nothing thinking, or they engage in overgeneralization. So one bad thing happens, and then, everything's bad. Mm-hmm. Mind reading, like, my friend didn't talk to me, she hates me. Kind of that mind reading game that we play sometimes. Catastrophizing.
Yeah.
Taking one small nugget of bad thing and just, it's the end of the world and nothing's going to go right. Mm-hmm. Or the shoulding. I love the shoulding. There's actually an old dead white guy psychologist who would tell his clients, quit shoulding on yourself. Because that only brings up guilt and criticism of self. Mm-hmm. So those are just a few types of cognitive distortions that we engage in as humans. And we all do these things from time to time.
Yeah.
These are not exclusive to people who are suffering clinical anxiety at any point in time. We all tend to do these things from time to time, fed by different, negative environments that surround us, or circumstances that we're going through.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know sometimes I fall into that all or nothing thinking. And
very much so.
Yeah, right.
Or so during the past couple months in 2020, it's like,
right.
This end or this end. And it's like, okay, let's recognize that. Let's be aware that we're doing this all or nothing thinking pattern. And then what do we do after that? What do we do after we are kind of aware of it?
Great question. So what we do is we go back to that connection between thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, right? So we're going to substitute thoughts that are even a tiny little bit, and this is what I tell my clients, even if it's just a little bit less negative, make it just a tiny bit more positive, a tiny bit more rational, a tiny bit more helpful, even if you don't believe it at first. But we won't find that substitute thought. So the theory is, if you think more positively, your mood is going to be more positive and your behavior is going to be more positive, right? So the final step then is to practice substituting that tiny bit better thought for that original cognitive distortion that you have, that you recognized.
Mhm.
So in those moments, it's instead of saying, my friend Amy didn't talk to me at the party, she must hate me, maybe something a little bit nicer is to say, my friend Amy didn't talk to me at the party. She was probably pretty busy, and I'm going to reach out to her and check in and make sure things are okay between us.
Yeah, yeah, both of those have very different impacts, of course, on how we're gonna maybe stew about it after, or our actions that we're gonna take.
Yeah, absolutely. So by substituting in those things and practicing, and what I say by practicing is going through those steps, recognizing cognitive distortions, labeling them, inserting a replacement thought,
Mhm.
catching yourself in the moment, and even spending some time journaling your day, journaling those moments where you've caught yourself doing it.
Yeah.
Um, and go to therapy, right? A therapist can help coach you in those things, can help you see those cognitive distortions, can help you retrace perhaps where those cognitive distortions came from to begin with.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Yeah. That's, yeah, also good and also prevalent right now and kind of going into the future as well. Is there anything else that you kind of, any, I don't know, anxiety tidbits or anything that you want to leave our audience with in regards to our thoughts and kind of anxiety?
You know, there are so many different types of anxiety out there. I'm sure everybody's heard the alphabet soup of anxiety, the OCD, being obsessive compulsive disorder, the PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. There's also social anxiety and generalized anxiety disorder. And there's just a gobbledygook. Like, if you're experiencing any anxiety symptoms, it's not up to you to know what you're suffering from. That's what my job is. That's what Shannon's job is. That's what counselors and therapists, that's part of what we do.
Mhm.
Um, and that's our expertise. So come in with your gobbledygook of stuff and let us help you figure that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Sort it out a little bit.
Yeah,
Cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for taking time for being with us. I know our audience is really going to like this.
good.
If anyone listening has a question that they want answered by a mental health or wellness professional, DM us. We'll get it answered for you. But yeah, in the meantime, have a good day. Thank you, everyone. Bye, Denise. Thank you.
Bye.